What would you do if a sudden solar eclipse swept you away from the 21st century back 1,000 years into the past, where dark magic and giant stone monsters are real? From a student afraid of heights, Victor is forced to join a league of legendary warriors to protect the Time Gate before the Dark Legion wipes out both the past and the future. This is not a history lesson. This is a battle for survival. The movie opens with a memory from the childhood of the character Victor. On an unlucky day, he and his family suffered a terrible accident when their car plunged straight off a bridge. Although Victor miraculously survived, his father did not make it through the accident. In the present, although Victor has become a teenager, he is still frequently haunted by nightmares about the crash and suffers from a paralyzing fear of heights. One morning, he adamantly refused to go to school because his class was organizing a field trip to a nearby mountainous region. At this location, they planned to observe a solar eclipse, but Victor feared that his fear of heights would relapse when climbing to the top of the slope. However, his mother persuaded her son to change his mind with the assurance that his father would always be present to protect him. Meanwhile, 1,000 years in the past, a sorcerer was conducting a dark ritual to search for a powerful treasure known as the Stone of Power. He intended to use it to rule the entire world. The fire flaring up before him took the shape of a dragon's head, perfectly matching the print on Victor's jacket in the modern day. Back in the present, Victor is enjoying a fun excursion with his closest friend, Vovchik. He brought along a few fireworks to set off at the end of the day, while Vovchik brought a handheld speaker to play around with. After trekking through the forest for a while, the group approached a suspension bridge. However, Victor became rooted to the spot in the middle of the bridge due to a flare-up of his fear of heights. This situation forced Vovchik to drag him back to the start of the bridge amidst the mockery of the entire class. Feeling humiliated, Victor ran into the forest and hid from everyone in an area near a cliff. Shortly after, Vovchik found his friend and tried to comfort him. However, their conversation was cut short when the solar eclipse began. Suddenly, a violent tremor occurred in the area. Vovchik slipped off the edge of the cliff and only managed to cling to the rocks. Victor desperately wanted to save his friend, but his terror of heights rendered him immobile. And before he could summon the courage to act, a magical portal opened right behind him, sucking both Victor and Vovchik's speaker inside. When Victor opened his eyes, he realized he was still on that cliff, but 1,000 years in the past. Nearby, an armored man named Oleshko was being surrounded and attacked by a group of foreign troops known as the Kumans. Oleshko was a skilled swordsman and easily defeated these soldiers, but the situation became complicated when he was attacked by their leader, Andak, who quickly overpowered him and summoned reinforcements. Just then, Victor slipped while trying to observe the fight and accidentally activated the handheld speaker. The siren's sound distracted the soldiers and created an opportunity for Oleshko to escape. Fortunately, he had a horse and managed to pull Victor up just before the Kuman soldiers could catch him. After a while, Victor and Oleshko reached a river, where he prayed to the river god to part the waters and create a path for them to cross. This path vanished as soon as they reached the other bank, forcing Andak and the Kumans to temporarily abandon the pursuit. Afterwards, Oleshko led Victor to his village, which was protected by a sturdy fortress. Victor's clothes and speech were considered bizarre by the local residents. Fearing he might be a spy, they threw him into a dungeon until a decision could be made. Meanwhile, Andak went to have an audience with the sorcerer to report on the mission's failure, but the sorcerer appeared jubilant upon hearing news of the strangely dressed boy. He was convinced that Victor was the one who would lead them to the Stone of Power. A while later, Victor was visited by Olenka, a local girl, who brought him milk and asked about his situation. Shortly after, Oleshko came to take him away, leading him to the river to undergo a trial. The river god would judge whether he was deceitful or trustworthy. Upon reaching the river bank, his hands were tied and he was thrown into the current, but the river god deemed him worthy and pushed him onto the shore unharmed. Victor was subsequently recognized as a member of the village and was formally granted an audience with the leaders. Among the leaders were the wise village elder Ovsi and the warriors Oleshko, Ilya, and Dobrynya. Suddenly, these names made Victor realize that these were the renowned knights described in ancient poems. He immediately declared that he came from 1,000 years in the future. At first, they did not believe him, but when he used the handheld speaker, they were astonished. Victor asked for a way to return to his own era, and Ovsi promised to look into it. That night, Oleshko arrived with information. After communing with the river god, there was a method for Victor to return to the future, but to achieve this, he needed to find a sorcerer who could teach him how to force open the time portal. Fortunately, Oleshko knew exactly where this sorcerer resided. As days passed, Victor spent his time in the village training in the use of the sword and bow. He was also able to admire the fortress's watchtower, which was tall enough to allow them to survey the entire kingdom. Later, he encountered Tugarin, a massive but simple-minded Kuman prisoner held in a cage near the watchtower. After his training concluded, Victor left the village to search for the sorcerer according to the map Oleshko had provided. By chance, he met Olenka while she was gathering mushrooms and persuaded her to act as his guide since she was familiar with the local terrain. Unaware that the sorcerer's scout Crow was watching them, the two children walked for several hours until they entered a passage between two sheer cliffs. Victor suddenly found himself in a desolate wasteland, which was an illusion created by the sorcerer living nearby. He heard strange voices in his head. If he wished to possess knowledge, he had to confess his greatest fear without deceit. Without hesitation, Victor shared the story of the car accident and his terror of heights. The sorcerer accepted him for daring to admit his weakness and shared the information he needed. He revealed that the Stone of Power could assist in opening a portal to the future. However, when Victor asked where the stone was, the sorcerer replied with a riddle. It resides in the nest of the wingless and will reveal itself when Victor rides the wind. Only he who knows how to use his heart to touch the heart of another can possess the Stone of Power. As soon as the sorcerer finished speaking, Victor returned to the forest with Olenka. When he recounted the riddle, she surmised that the nest of the wingless referred to a nearby village named Lalechi, meaning stork village. A few hours later, the duo reached the village. Victor built a kite on the spot and used it to ride the wind, as the riddle had suggested. Before long, the kite fell of its own accord into a small nearby pond. He dove into the water, followed the kite string, and finally found the Stone of Power. Unbeknownst to anyone, the sorcerer's crow had witnessed everything and flew back to report to its master. Upon receiving the news, the sorcerer dispatched a squad of Kuman soldiers to seize the stone. These cruel warriors not only kidnapped Victor and Olenka, but also set fire to Lalechi village. Fortunately, thanks to the watchtower, the soldiers at the fortress detected the attack and immediately deployed troops led by Ilya, Dobrynya, and Oleshko. They easily defeated the Kuman forces thanks to their superior swordsmanship. When everyone returned to the fortress following the victory, Ilya vowed to help Victor find the portal home, but Ovsi suggested they needed to wait for a storm because the deity who created the stone was the Lord of Thunder. He believed that only a storm could activate its energy. Afterward, Victor followed Ovsi home and discovered that the old man was attempting to build a flying machine. The boy from the future took this opportunity to explain the principles of aerodynamics to him using a paper airplane model. From then on, Victor and Ovsi worked together to create functional wings. In the next scene, Ovsi suggested that the best place to hide the Stone of Power was at the top of the watchtower, but when Victor refused to climb up there, he reminded the boy that facing one's fears was essential. Shortly after, Victor and Ovsi reached the top of the tower, where the old man hid the stone beneath a pile of rubble. Unfortunately, the sorcerer had observed everything through his magical flames. A few hours later, a violent hailstorm struck. Giant hailstones pelted Tugarin's cage, causing him pain. Witnessing this, Victor took an old piece of canvas and covered the cage to protect the prisoner. That night, a bolt of lightning struck the pile of rocks atop the watchtower. The Stone of Power and debris fell near Tugarin's cage. He cunningly used a shard to break the lock and escape. He stole a few items from the village, including the Stone of Power, and fled. He arrived at the Kuman camp, where the sorcerer realized that Tugarin had accidentally brought back the stone. He then informed Andak that they now needed the person who had retrieved the stone to activate it. The next morning, everyone in the fortress discovered that Tugarin and the stone were missing. Nevertheless, Victor and Ovsi remained focused on completing the flying machine, as it was their only hope of retrieving the stone without starting a war. A while later, Ovsi and Olenka went out to gather berries and moss. There, they were ambushed by a group of Kumans who kidnapped Olenka. Ovsi attempted to defend himself, but was severely wounded. He managed to crawl back to the village to alert everyone, but then took his final breath. Meanwhile, Olenka was dragged before Andak. He snatched the paper bird Victor had given her and sent it back to the fortress via Crow. When Victor received it, he decided to risk his life and go to the Kuman camp alone. There, he was ordered to activate the stone if he wanted Olenka to live. But Victor quickly pulled some fireworks from his pocket, lit them, and threw them at the soldiers to create chaos. Unfortunately, before he and Olenka could escape, they were recaptured by Andak, who gave them one final chance to activate the stone. Victor did not know what to do until he recited the riddle in his mind and realized that the part about touching heart to heart referred to the magic of human emotion. He approached Olenka, and when they held the stone together, the magic within it finally awakened. At that moment, the sorcerer snatched the stone, and Andak ordered Tugarin to kill the two children. However, Tugarin could not bring himself to do it, remembering Victor's kindness toward him. Instead, he freed the two prisoners and found them a horse to escape. The next morning, Victor and Olenka returned to the fortress and warned everyone of the impending attack by the Kumans. The following day, accompanying the Kuman army was a giant golem, stone monster, that the sorcerer controlled using the power of the stone. The monster hurled a massive boulder at the fortress gate, destroying it completely. Sensing the danger, Oleshko left the fortress and lured the golem into chasing him. He skillfully dodged its slow attacks until he caused the monster to trip and fall into the river, where the river god restrained it. Just then, a new solar eclipse began, and Andak ordered his troops to attack the fortress. However, the villagers bravely defended their home under the leadership of the three knights. When Andak realized he was on the verge of defeat, he attempted to flee, but the sorcerer managed to pull the golem out of the water to resume the attack. Seeing this, Victor devised a plan to climb to the top of the watchtower and use the flying machine to reach the sorcerer. Offsee's encouraging words echoed in his mind, helping him overcome his fear and allowing Victor to climb onto the machine and jump from the fortress wall. The flying machine glided smoothly, just as he had hoped. He soon landed on the cliff where the sorcerer was standing. Victor pushed him into the abyss and finally retrieved the Stone of Power. Unfortunately, Andak also arrived at the cliff with the intention of stealing the stone. They grappled for a while, and Victor finally threw the stone into the water to protect it. With the stone's power gone, the golem immediately crumbled into dust. Enraged that his plan was ruined, Andak lunged at Victor, but before he could harm him, Oleshko arrived. The two men fought fiercely, and eventually, Andak also fell into the abyss to his death, just like the sorcerer. After the battle, Oleshko took Victor to the forest where the magical portal was located. Olenka also came to say goodbye to him, and they exchanged a passionate kiss. As soon as Victor stepped into the portal, he was transported back to the present, where Vovchik was still dangling from the edge of the cliff. Now no longer afraid of heights, he bravely saved his friend. This earned Victor enthusiastic applause from the entire class, who were watching from the other side of the cliff. The film transitions to a scene 1 year later, when Victor discovers a heart-shaped rock in a nearby forest. He touches the stone, sensing Olenka's presence on the other side of time. The movie has come to an end. Thank you, goodbye, and see you again.